Yellow. Now, we've all seen disrespect come in many forms, from playful, fun, to straight up cruel and unusual. But watch this clip here. Backed against the ropes, both fighters, hands down, tentative. Note this pivot here. He was trying to step out in space by turning an angle. This is a very common technique executed for creating angles. You may have actually done this in your training yourself, often with a pylon or a taped floor.
For starters, a lot of fighters don't even stand on their pivot. You must be on your pivot. For starters, it's the first thing I learned. And one of the key things that I learned in my career for movement, pivot, certain terms, certain angles. I remember day one. You know, the first thing I learned.
And here, you can see James Lights Out Toney implementing it extensively into a style, using the pivot to subtly take angles. As you can see, his style is very subtle, just slightly moving off his opponent's line of attack. It's a game of inches, and with Lights Out Toney, he's a master, able to swap his stance into a left haymaker or pivot in or out. He's forcing his opponents to turn by just inches while he's still facing them. From orthodox, he can exit out on his strike using the pivot left, which simultaneously creates some distance and forces his opponent to turn. Or he can pivot in towards the right, closer to his opponent. Here, you can see it threw off his opponent's line of attack. His opponent adjusts by turning slightly while winding into a haymaker. All of that was just too telegraphed. It was too slow. The time it would take for him to reach his target was just too great. Thus, James Lights Out Toney, with a tighter shot, beats him to the punch. As you can tell, James Toney was a genius, a defensive genius who constantly created angles to throw his opponents off by using such a simple technique. Simplicity is the highest form of sophistication. Leonardo da Vinci. Watch here how, after the jab, James Toney pivots out with his right hand. This increases the strike's power, gives it more oomph, but also forces his opponent to reach out with his hand to gauge where Lights Out Toney went. Where did he go? Throughout that questioning process, unfortunately for him, that also opened up his guard. From that new angle, boom. Truly, a master. He could also step and turn. His opponent lined this maneuver up with a lead hook. But from there, this is just where things get crazy. By mere inches and head movement, James Lights Out Toney enters Ultra Instinct. It's very subtle. He makes his opponents follow him, touching them as he does, and just when you're in line, he pivots out again. As you can tell, his opponent, frustrated by this, he's forced to tie up from the sheer confusion of what James Lights Out Toney is doing to him. It's just crazy. James Toney was a magician. Within those millimeters, what he was doing was magic. It's just crazy seeing this. He's just one of those guys who could stand right in front of you and just not get touched. With his use of angles, the subtlety through which he'd create distance even if his opponent turned with their shot, because he'd increase the distance their punch would have to travel in order to connect, and because he'd increase its telegraph by forcing them to turn with it, because he'd have them make that mistake. From there, he could more easily see it coming. It was just a greater tier of understanding, a knowledge advantage, a flow articulated, finessed through the constraints of a trained understanding. It's a perfect harmony of science meeting art. Truly, what a magician. Boom. But back here, Used to move into a bit more space, his opponent, he tried to compensate for that distance by leaping into a shot. He sees it a mile away. Boom. It's a TKO via ultimate disrespect. He won via what Carl Jungian psychology would call TKO Vigo. Well played, my man. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you'd like more from me, please subscribe and hit the notifications. Thank you if you did. It truly does mean a lot to me. Thank you. Smash the like button if you enjoyed. It's Karma, and until next time, peace.